Hello, Fallen Dragonite here, and this is the final part of my Black Friday review series. And I am going to end on a bit of a doozy. Yes, at long last, I've got my hands on a Replicade. This is, of course, the Street Fighter II Replicade unit from New Wave Toys. Now then, these are a bit different than some of the other arcade units I've reviewed so far because this thing is massive. It is a massive 12 inches tall, 1/6 scale, and definitely goes for a lot of those realistic details that you would see in a real arcade machine. You see the box, it's pretty nice. You also have all of the details on the back, and there's this inside, the nice world map artwork with, of course, the original character select. Now then, you may notice on the front it says it has Street Fighter II Champion Edition and Super Street Fighter II Turbo. Yes, it has two arcade machines. Two arcade games in one machine. And here it is. Yes. Like the black monolith, here is the Replicade unit. Oh, I got some painter's tape on my knuckle there. You can see they really went all out with the detail. The actual original decal right on the side of the cabinet, and this is actually screened on. This is not a sticker in any sort of way like previous arcade machines we've looked at. The original Champion Edition marquee, the original bevel, the original console detail, and even more so, that's real wood paneling on this machine. They really went out and made this as close to an authentic arcade machine as possible, even more so than you would see on a arcade 1-up. And not as expensive either, or taking up as much space. Even down to coin doors with actual return buttons. And yeah, you can actually open this up. Of course, this is just empty space. And the other coin door also opens as well. And here is where I have stashed the little accessory that comes with every Replicade, and that is the little 1/6 scale tokens. I'm not taking them out of the baggie because, much like the He-Man dagger, it will get lost, though it will get lost pretty easily. So let's actually take a look at the console. As you can see in here, those are actual micro switches. Not very many of the arcade, I don't think any miniature arcade unit I've reviewed so far had micro switches. Of course, there are a few other things that do come with this. Of course, you got the instruction manual. You also get a charging cable. Yeah. Even my arcade don't come with the USB cable. You have to provide your own. And then you get these. I've seen people do reviews of this online, and they don't know what these are. I'm going to explain for people who probably don't know. They're the replacements for these little rubber feet. The reason you need replacements is because these are just stickered on, and underneath them is screws. You will need to remove the screws in order to get to the lithium battery. Yes, this has a rechargeable lithium battery inside. The reason I know this is because this is technically my second unit. What happened was that when I bought my unit on Big Bad Toy Store, it turned out my unit was defective. The console would not work at all. Well, it would work for like one round and then just stop. So I had to go through customer service. We troubleshooted. We actually took the bottom off, unplugged and replugged the lithium battery in, tried to figure out what was wrong, and they eventually just had to send me a new unit. So yeah, got a new unit. It works, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. And now let's actually take a look at the back of the unit. You can see right here, here are the unit speakers in the back. Just like in the original arcade machine, it even has this little molded detail, which is, of course, the lock, which is used to service the speakers. This is just molded detail. It doesn't actually work in any sort of way, shape, or form. It's just there for detail. We have the power on button, and we have a volume slider here. And then there's this, the USB controller. Yeah. Just take it out. Like so. This is exactly the same as the controls on the console, even down to the sticker. I believe this is a sticker. And now there is something that needs to be pointed out before we continue. There is this little panel that slides out. I'm not going to slide out all the way because it's a pain in the butt to get back in. When I'm not on camera, when I'm on camera, and in here is the other USB cord, because of course the controller has its own USB cord in case you're using the standard USB in order to recharge the unit, because you can get about 2 hours of gameplay out of this. And of course, there's the charging port, and there is the plugins for the controllers. Yes, you can plug in 2 controllers if you don't want to use the console. And trust me, from someone who played on the Neo Geo Mini, you're going to need 2 controllers because having one person hunched over the console blocking the screen is not exactly ideal. But there is one thing that needs to be mentioned about the controller. Now then, with the Neo Geo Mini, depending on what USB port you plug the controller into would determine which port, if the controller is player 1 or player 2. So basically, if you plug in a controller, depending on where the USB was on the Neo Geo Mini, would determine if the controller was player 1 or player 2, and then the console would be the opposite player. That is not the case with this unit. If you plug in one controller, that controller will always be player 2, and the console will always be player 1. That will get a bit annoying if you want to just play with the controller. There is a way around that because, of course, in the game's options, you can actually have the 1-player, 2-player switch, which basically means that regardless of what button you press, it will let you play, albeit if you're on the player 2, you will be playing the player 2 side. And I found that if you put in another credit, the player 2 controls will just stop working. So if you want to play with 2 players, or if you want to play with just the joysticks and not the console, it is recommended that you buy a second controller. And yes, there is. You can buy the controller separately. Just same foam packaging and whatnot. Now then, it is worth mentioning that you can use other USB controllers, but they are not all going to work. So far, I have tested this unit with a third-party Xbox 360 controller, and it just would not recognize. I mean, the light was flashing, but it just would not register on the unit. And then I used a third-party wired PlayStation 3 controller, which is also USB. That thing worked nicely, and even the select button worked as a coin in button, which I'll explain more about coin in later, but yeah, your mileage will vary depending on what USB controllers you use, and it is kind of more recommended to use the ones that are made precisely for this unit. And also later units of Replicade, like the recently released Dragon's Lair, will also use these plug-in USB controllers. Now then, before we continue, let's take a look at scale. And of course, I'm bringing out Claudine Wolf that we were using for scale before. As you can see, compensating for her base, she is perfectly in scale with the machine. Of course, this is indeed 1/6 scale. So basically all your 12-inch figure, all your 12-inch dolls will fit in scale with this machine. So without further ado, I'm going to bring the camera in a little closer so we can get a nice shot of that screen. So we're going to turn it on. Coin doors light up. As it boots up, you're going to look up here. Our key light's up too. And also the back of the unit has 3 lights, red, white, and blue, just like the red, white, and blue of the console buttons. It's also booting up the original ROM. Excuse any noises upstairs. I'm going to turn it down a bit. Now then, I had this thing set at half volume. This thing gets really, really loud, just like an arcade machine. I'm going to press the second button. Yes, these are your buttons here. This is menu. You see we're on the menu. We have the game select, which allows us to select between Street Fighter II Champion Edition or Super Street Fighter II Turbo. We're going to stay on Champion Edition, of course. You can see with both controllers plugged in, it's only the first player one works. You can see that allows us to switch to Street Fighter II, Super Street Fighter II Turbo. And we're just going to switch back to Champion Edition. Okay, we gotta wait for the ROM to boot up. Second option is difficulty. And the diagram underneath actually represents the dip switches. For those of you who do not know what dip switches are, they're the switches that arcade owners actually switch on the machine to determine the difficulty. Only Street Fighter II Champion Edition has a difficulty select. Super Street Fighter II Turbo will not let you change the difficulty from 4. And of course we have the Player 1, Player 2 switch, which will determine which side will actually be able to use the controller. The marquee light turns the light on off. Backlight, I'm going to turn it up a little more so it's more visible. And then of course you can see how much battery is left in the unit. So let's actually play. Put a coin in. Yeah, this is the coin. And like I said, if you have a wired PlayStation 3 controller, the select button will work as coin too. Yeah, I'm looking at the screen instead of the camera, and I am doing pretty bad. Oh, I landed right in that. Ah, oh, that was clutch. That was clutch. Yeah. I was more of a Mortal Kombat kid than I was a Street Fighter kid, so I'm not as good with Street Fighter as I am with Mortal Kombat. There we go. Okay. Now just to demonstrate Street Fighter II Turbo. Super Street Fighter II Turbo, yeah, I keep forgetting that. Now then, all the buttons on here work just like this. Yeah, I'm going to show. Yeah, you can't change the difficulty on Super Street Fighter II Turbo. Anyway, that is that. Just turn it off. Takes a while to power down, but yeah. There we go. And that is, of course, the Street Fighter II Replicade machine. But there is one other thing I want to do before we wrap this up, because I wouldn't know when else I would have to talk about this, because there is display options for this machine. They're sold separately, of course, but there's this nice little mat that you can get separately. And all you do is just put it on the unit, like so. It's made to look just like a arcade carpet. Even has black light effects too. So if you have a USB bulb, it will actually glow under it. And of course, you don't even have to use it with the Replicade. I mean, I use this with the My Arcades and the Arcade Classics, and they work just fine. And of course, they are straight edge. So if you buy multiple mats, you can actually just link them together and make a huge display, which I would recommend if you have a bunch of these machines. I don't mean just Replicate, I mean a bunch of miniature arcade machines in general. May not work with the Tiny Arcade, but it works with the My Arcades and the Arcade Classics. Anyway, that is my review of the Street Fighter II Replicade and the end of my Black Friday crunch. To be honest, this was a bit of an exhausting series of reviews, mostly because I kept getting technical issues on a few of them, especially this one. This was my 5th reshoot, and I almost did not get the 1 o'clock out. But hopefully now all the reviews are done. Hope you've had a good Thanksgiving. Hope your Black Friday isn't as chaotic as previous years, especially considering with the virus. So, see you all next time.